Welcome back! So at the last episode, we ran down the first 5 of our top 10 things for new residents to know about Ringwood, and today we're back for the second half of the list. We'll recap the whole list before we reveal number 1.
Right, and again, you don't have to be a new resident to, take in what we're talking about in this episode. So if you're new, great. If you're new to us, great. If you're an old-timer or a long-timer, great. Welcome.
So we're starting with number 5, which is the local government here in Ringwood. We did a whole episode on the Faulkner Act a few months ago, and the Faulkner Act dictates how our local government is run. So essentially, the town votes in a 7-person council, and then that council elects a mayor and a deputy mayor from within their ranks, and also hires a town manager to hire the day-to-day responsibilities of the borough.
Right. Now, our council currently is made up of 7 Republicans, all the same party, which also includes a new member who replaced a departing council person who was moving out of Ringwood. We'll talk more about the council in future episodes.
Number 4, there is no place to shop. Now, we have one supermarket in town, a Stop & Shop, found in the Fieldstone Shopping Center. Spoiler alert, it's not great.
It's not.
Right, let's be clear. The shopping center isn't that great. And you just drive into the parking lot, you'll see exactly what we're talking about there. Now, Stop & Shop here, it's a small supermarket with limited selections. I mean, it's got all the fresh products, but especially the produce at times leaves a lot to be desired.
But Stop & Shop is only part of the problem. The 2 major shopping centers in town, Fieldstone and Ringwood Plaza, are full of empty storefronts, they are poorly maintained, and they look like they haven't been updated in about 30 years. Because they haven't.
Right. I mean, heck, we were actually the filming site for a movie that was set in the late 1990s because it looks like it's from the late 1990s.
They didn't have to do a thing.
Didn't have to do a thing. I mean,
they had to make it look nicer.
Yeah.
If you are doing a time travel movie or a period piece about the 80s or the 90s and you want to come to Ringwood, apparently, that is our Chamber of Commerce message. We are stuck in the past.
Now, it's been a hot topic to renovate Fieldstone and get it up to speed with the current 21st century, but that whole discussion reached a fever pitch this year when the town council shared that the only way to rehabilitate it was to introduce high-density housing, up to 400 units, as part of the project. Now, naturally, there was public outcry, and there was really some invaluable work done by the Facebook group Neighbors for the Preservation of Ringwood that eventually led to this plan thankfully being abandoned, and showing that, of course, that was never the only option.
There's a lot to unpack there, so as much as this is a top 5 or top 10, item, we'll be digging into the whole Fieldstone situation in a future episode.
Number 3. This town loves its St. Patrick's Day Parade.
We love
St.
Patrick's Day.
Now, the Ringwood St. Patrick's Day Parade is the only such parade in all of Passaic County, and the town treats it as if it's the biggest event of the year. A green stripe is painted down the middle of Skyline Drive, the Lakeland Marching Band comes out, as do pipe bands from all over. Groups like the Scouts, local Democrat and Republican clubs, and various other community groups all march.
But, as we discussed on the previous episode, Ringwood sometimes does stuff a little differently than other towns, and the St. Patrick's Day Parade is never actually on St. Patrick's Day. It's usually also not on the weekend closest to the holiday. In fact, in 2022, the parade was on March 26th, and in 2023, it was on March 25th. And there's never a rain date, so sometimes, actually, it seems like more often than not, the parade is cold, the parade is wet, you're going to get hailed on, you're going to get rained on, it's going to be chilly. And the past 2 years have, well, they were some of the most miserable days of all of March to have to march that half a mile. But the good news is we as a town come together, we come out in full force, and we are there for this fantastic event.
Yeah, this parade really shows a time when the entire town agrees on something and everyone can come out and enjoy it, and that's exceedingly rare nowadays, so it's nice to see that neither weather nor the event falling on the actual holiday dampens the town's love of the parade.
That said, I think my feet are still not fully recovered from the last year's parade. That was a cold, cold day.
Every year there's a pair of socks that get sacrificed to the great parade, so that's how we celebrate it in my house. Now, one of the most disgraceful places in our town's history is the Ford Superfund site located in Upper Ringwood. For those of you that haven't watched the HBO documentary Man vs. Ford, do me a favor. pause this episode that you're listening to, go to your HBO Max app.
It's just Max now.
Oh, right. Sorry. They are still trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up. Go to your Max app, search Man vs. Ford, and then come back to this episode, because what comes next has everything to do with that documentary. Because the short version is simply this. There was a Ford plant in Mahwah, and Ford were using a former mining site in our town to dump its waste in the 1960s.
Now, that's already not great. But in the 1970s, some of the land was given to the Ramapo people as affordable housing, and that land was some of the contaminated area.
And the situation has been ongoing for more than 40 years at this point, and most recently came to a head when borough management decided to basically put a top on it instead of cleaning up the mess, where over 150,000 tons of contaminated soil exists. Now, we will have much, much more to say about this in the fall, but it is a piece of Ringwood that simply can't and shouldn't be ignored, despite how strongly certain people in this town want you to ignore it.
Now, to recap, before our number 1, our top 10 things new residents should know about Ringwood are...
Number 10, dates to remember.
Number 9 is Skyline Drive.
Number 8, you probably have a septic system.
Number 7, understanding how the schools work.
Number 6, nature.
Number 5, our local government vis-a-vis the Faulkner Act.
Number 4, shopping in Ringwood, or a lack thereof.
Number 3, and I'm not doing a fake accent, the St. Patrick's Day Parade.
Number 2, the Superfund site.
And the number 1 thing new residents should know about Ringwood is... We have bears!
Oh my gosh, do we ever have bears?
Much like Dwight Schrute, some residents of Ringwood and some co-hosts of this podcast are obsessed with the ursine wildlife that live here in Ringwood. If you've lived here long enough, you have likely had a bear on your property, had one go through your trash, or had one cross in front of your car at least once. I have actually seen 3 bears in the last 3 weeks.
Fantastic, right?
Yeah. That's awesome.
Again, that's a beautiful part about living here, and we let them have their space, and they, for all intents and purposes, let us have ours. I mean, there's beets, bears, Battlestar Galactica. I caught your Dwight Schrute reference there, so that was awesome. Well done. But because of the bears, you might want to secure your trash a little bit better than you would in any place, on the planet that doesn't have black bears. But really, aside from that, as long as you're careful not to taunt them, not to corner them, and just don't go up to them, for goodness sakes. Take your pictures, enjoy your Ring cameras and your all of your Blink outdoor cameras, whatever they are, because it is hard not to live a peaceful coexistence with our fuzzy counterparts if you just let them be.
So that's a little primer on what we feel are the important things about Ringwood. Now, obviously, there's lots more we could talk about. We just highlighted 10 things that we thought were interesting or relevant right now. But if this type of stuff is interesting to you, there are tons of resources to learn more about our town, and we hope that you'll come back here, where hopefully you'll learn something new about the town every time you listen in.
Yeah, look out for some of the groups in town that you can join and volunteer for, whether it's the library, it's the Scouts, it's the Green Team. There's ways in which you can, be a part of the town. I mean, again, we mentioned, 10 things here. There's probably 1,010 things that, that we could talk about. But really and truly, whether you're a new resident, you're a life resident, you are whatever you are, hopefully we gave you a couple things to think about, and just consider next time when someone is asking you, well, tell me about Ringwood. Hopefully we gave you something to think about. And we'll see you again as we're about to really kick off the exciting season here in Ringwood, aren't we?
Can't wait.
Can't wait. We'll see you for the next episode.